This is Benjamin Franklin, editor of Poor Richard's Almanac, standing outside the courtroom here in Boston, awaiting the verdict in the trial of Captain Robert Preston, accused of giving the order to his troops to fire on the crowd on Boston Common, March 5, 1770, resulting in the deaths of 5 unarmed civilians. We have just received word that the jury is about to return with a verdict. As we wait for the jury to come back into the courtroom, let's review some of the eyewitness testimony that the jury has been listening to over the past few days.
When I came onto King Street about 9 o'clock, I saw the soldiers around the sentinel. I asked one if he was loaded, and he said yes. I asked him if he would fire. He said yes, by the eternal God, and pushed his bayonet at me. After the firing, the captain came before the soldiers and put up their guns with his arm and said, "Stop firing. Don't fire no more, and don't fire again." I heard the word fire and took it and am certain that it came from behind the soldiers. I saw a man passing busily behind who I took to be an officer. The firing was a little time after. I saw some persons fall. Before the firing, I saw a stick thrown at the soldiers. The word fire I took to be a word of command.
The soldiers came up to the sentinel, and the officer told them to place themselves, and they formed a half moon. The captain told the boys to go home, lest there should be some murder done. They were throwing snowballs, did not go off, but threw more snowballs. The captain was behind the soldiers. The captain told them to fire, and one gun went off.
I saw some soldiers coming out of the guardhouse with their guns and running down one after another to the custom house. Some of the people said, "Let's attack the main guard," or the sentinel who was gone to King Street. Some said, "For God's sake, don't let's touch the main guard." I went down, saw the soldiers planted by the custom house 2 deep. The people were calling them lobsters, daring them to fire, saying, "Damn you, why don't you fire?" I saw Captain Preston out from behind the soldiers, in the front at the right. He spoke to some people. The captain stood between the soldiers and the gutter, about 2 yards from the gutter. I saw 2 or 3 strike with sticks on the guns. I was going off to the west of the soldiers and heard the guns fire and saw the dead carried off. Soon after, the guards' drums beat to arms. The people, while striking on the guns, cried, "Fire, damn you, fire!" I have heard no orders given to fire, only the people in general cried fire.
The verdict is in. Captain Preston has been found not guilty, and the crowd is not happy. As you know, the verdict in a criminal trial must be unanimous. If we can, let's try to interview 1 or 2 of the jurors as they exit the courtroom. Sir, may I ask you to comment on the verdict?
Well, we listened to the testimony very carefully. It was hard, because the eyewitnesses weren't all on the same page, you know. Almost everyone heard the command to fire, but some said it came after the first shot was fired. So who fired the first shot? One of the eyewitnesses said he was standing just a few feet away when the order to fire was given. Someone else was certain the order was given from a window behind the soldiers. Believe me, I have no love for these soldiers. They're making our lives miserable. Hell, one of them is living in my house, and if you think that's a picnic, you're out of your mind. But I guess it's about reasonable doubt. And there was enough reasonable doubt to give this guy a pass. But I'll tell you something, from now on, I'm carrying a gun.
Thank you very much, sir. Ma'am, would you mind telling us your impressions of the trial and how you arrived at your verdict?
I've been in that smoky room for 4 days and I can hardly breathe. All I want to do right now is go home and take a bath. You know about secondhand smoke, right? Do you have any idea how hard it is to arrive at the truth when you have 7 eyewitnesses who are all telling a different story? Not to mention Preston himself would probably lie to his grandmother on her deathbed to get out of jail. He actually said he gave the order to stop firing, if you believe that. But at the end of the day, I think it's better to let a guilty man go free than to punish an innocent one.
This will certainly go down as a defining moment in our history of being occupied by the British. We will conclude this edition of Poor Richard's Almanac with another segment of Point Counterpoint. Presenting the point will be Jane Curtin. Dan Aykroyd will respond with the point counterpoint Counterpoint point.
You know, Dan, I read your disgusting column the other day. I've always known you were a fascist, but I'm still amazed that you could take the side of the soldiers. The crowd was unarmed. They were minding their own business, and they were fired upon like fish in a barrel. Do you know that witnesses say that over 100 shots were fired? These guys are not using Uzis, Dan. They have muskets that take time to load, so there is no doubt that they took the time to reload and continue shooting. And guess what, Dan? Those guys are not what you would call independent thinkers. If they kept loading their muskets, it's because someone told them to. Hello? Loyalism has its limits, Dan. I always thought that despite being an ideological Neanderthal, you at least had some decency.
Jane, you ignorant. Maybe the crowd was unarmed, but they were throwing sticks, rocks, and snowballs. When was the last time you got hit with a rock in the head, Jane? Did it hurt? You think a rock can't do damage to the head it comes in contact with? Even a bleeding heart like yourself should understand self-defense and the instinct for survival. And just who did you sleep with to get this job?
And that's the way it is. Today, March 25th, 1770. Good night and good luck.